Bill Belichick, I don't know who you're going to bring in that's got a better resume. And I just feel that for a team that I really do not think is that far away, I like the way this team's playing right now, even without their franchise quarterback. I feel the locker room wants him back. I think he's a really good football coach. I believe Jerry Jones thinks he's a really good football coach, too. As we stand and talk right now, I expect Mike McCarthy to be back in 2025.
Just for clarity's sake, that was before the game last night, though I'm sure last night wouldn't have changed, or I wouldn't assume last night changed his mind. So now we've heard Micah Parsons, their best defensive player, come out and support Mike McCarthy. We've heard Dak Prescott, their star quarterback who makes all the money, supporting him. And you hear the Hall of Fame, franchise legend supporting Mike McCarthy. I'll ask you very directly, do you believe that Mike McCarthy will be the coach of the Cowboys next season?
I do. And that hasn't changed for me. I used to say this when you're asking the question week in and week out. It's the who else. To Aikman's point, if Bill Belichick is your answer, then I would say okay. But if it's not Bill Belichick, I think it's hard to go find someone who has a better setup. And so, the way this season was developed, it was a Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones issue much more than it was a Mike McCarthy issue.
And I think that I would put Mike Vrabel in that conversation. Also, I think there are other coaches out there that I think might be better than Mike McCarthy. But right now, this situation suggests to me that the players want him back. They're playing hard for him right now. I don't see a reason to move on from him. The next few weeks, I think, will determine a lot as far as his tenure is concerned.
Yeah, this is the time of year where the conversations I'm having, like there are people that want to project certainty. Like there are people who tell you, like, oh, Dallas will come open. Like there's not, and there's a point to be made about, he doesn't have a contract for next year. Like if Jerry Jones wanted Mike McCarthy back for next year, he could do that now.
Right.
He could extend, and he hasn't. So I think it's worth watching the situation. Because fundamentally, Mike McCarthy was brought in because Jason Garrett could not get over the hump of playoff success. Mike McCarthy hasn't either. Right. Now, do you interpret this year as a lost year where he didn't even have the opportunity to do that because he lost the quarterback and all, and the defense fell apart? Maybe. Or do you look at this as long this was his last shot and he still didn't get it done? So I think there is a question mark. I think there's a question mark hanging over the situation. Troy Aikman may well and likely does have better sources in that building than I do. But I think there's a question mark hanging over the situation with Mike McCarthy.
There are at least two names that I think will be interesting to banter about. One of them that we didn't mention here is Deion Sanders.
No doubt.
Let's wait and see what happens with that. And then the other is Bill Belichick. Let's talk about him. Belichick yesterday confirmed he's been in talks with the University of North Carolina about that school's head coaching position. Belichick appearing on McAfee as always. The future Hall of Fame head coach is 27 wins away from breaking Don Shula's NFL wins record. He was asked about Schefter's report about the meeting that he had with the Tar Heels that lasted hours and hours. Here's what Bill said.
Schefter told us that you talked to him for 5 hours yesterday. Is that real? 5 hours?
Yeah, let's just leave it at that, Pat. I mean, I don't want to give out too much information. I'll lose my press conference. I want to get my press conference aura back. Let me put this in capital letters. If.
Yeah.
I-F. If I was in a college program, the college program would be a pipeline to the NFL for the players that had the ability to play in the NFL. It would be a professional program, training, nutrition, scheme, coaching, techniques that would transfer to the NFL. It will be an NFL program at a college level.
Okay, so that second part was what I wanted to make sure that you heard. The first part is Bill being Bill. Yeah. The second part, you cannot tell me that is not a person who has given this some thought.
For sure.
So for all the people out there who might think, and I would have been one of them, there's no way in the world Bill is going to college. He's just wants the name out there, whatever the case is. That sounded to me like a person who was given this some thought. And frankly, if I'm the university president and he walks in and says that to me, I'm intrigued.
Right, but what does that mean, right? Like you're talking about a whole setup with the way the college game is right now. You're talking about not just the university president, but you're talking about various collectives and I mean, like there's a lot of structure that has to be in place if he's going to pull off what he's talking about there. I do think he's taking it seriously. I think it'd be, he feels like it'd probably be disrespectful not to, right? Like to play sort of footsie with a possibility of a job and then not take it seriously. I've talked to people who would know that say, yes, is something he's seriously considering. So are the chances of him getting it or taking it high? Probably not, but I don't think there's zero either, and I think that's fascinating.
he's already refining his recruiting pitch. Like,
Yeah,
that was
right.
the recruiting pitch
Yeah.
right there.
Right.
And I do think that I would argue that Bill Belichick would not be suited for the college job, but the college job is changing.
Yeah.
And you can make it what you want. So if you have Bill Belichick at home base, he's not going to go around recruiting all these kids and go in their living rooms, every living room all the time. But if he's at home base and he can send out people to talk to them and they bring him back and say, you can come to this program. I'm not going to sell you on all this nonsense. I know football, obviously. I know the NFL. That's where you want to go. I can get you there. I think that's a pretty good sales pitch. And if you're looking to raise money for collectives, it's pretty nice to have Bill Belichick show up with 6 rings to raise money.
I will remind everyone, as Jeff, you comment that you went to the University of North Carolina. Go.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, I have talked with Bubba Cunningham, who's the AD. I've talked to coaches, so it would be disingenuous for me to say I'm throwing, support. Whoever they hire, I will support 100%. I am fired up that we have people the caliber of Bill Belichick interested in our job, and it is real. And I think from my perspective, the thing that Bill could do, he is a process-driven maniac. He would understand the difference between a coaching staff and a recruiting NIL staff. And I think that part would be interesting to see those two run parallel. Because to your point, he doesn't got to sit in 18-year-old living rooms anymore, right? He's going to have other people who do. That's not the case for every college football coach. So if he's focused on the fundamentals of football and teaching guys how to get to the NFL, and he has another group, that would be an interesting test case for colleges.
There's another piece to this, of course, when I mentioned it in the lead into it, is that he is 27 wins away from the all-time wins record in the National Football League. And people will say, well, he needs to go to the NFL because he wants that record so badly. Here's my perception of Bill. I don't pretend to know him well, but I've been around him, and I get the sense that he is like many others that I've known in my 30 years of covering sports. That guy is a lifer, coaching in his blood.
Right.
He wants to coach. Do I think the record is important to him? Probably. Why wouldn't it be? But I believe, Dan, that if he was 100 wins away or if he already had it, he would still want to be a football coach. And if this feels to him like his best option of doing it, then I will not be surprised at all if he takes it.
I think getting the impression that he's not going to get an NFL job or that he's not going to get the level of interest that he would hope to get given what his resume is. He only had one team interested last year and they didn't hire him. Right, so that's.
Can we remind everybody, there are 3 jobs open right now, right? New Orleans, the Jets, and the Bears could be talking to him right now if they wanted to.
Exactly. He's not working for any team, so he could interview with those teams, New Orleans, the Jets, or the Bears, if they wanted to. So, and certainly, look, I mean, you have people that are trying to poke around and find out what could come open. Would you have interest? That kind of thing. If he's not getting the right vibes, then I could see a college idea being even more appealing to him. So that's the question. Is this happening because he doesn't think there's a path back to the NFL for him right now, or is it happening because on its own it's an appealing opportunity?
I think you're right in that the wins record is something that he probably cares about, but it's not something he needs at all.
No.
If I ask anybody on the street who's the best NFL coach of all time, they're going to say Bill Belichick. They're not going to say Bill Belichick if he gets 27 more wins. So if your point is right, he can build a situation that is a little bit lower pressure and can build it the way that he wants in college. I think that's more likely, and that might be a more attractive situation for somebody at this stage.
Yeah, and for you who talks about records should have asterisks about all the different things, the time that Bill coached through and the parity in the NFL that he's managed through to get even close to that record is phenomenal. And to your point, everybody, has crowned him the greatest NFL coach of all time. Him going back to the NFL doesn't get him a higher seat in the Hall of Fame. It is what it is. So whichever job he feels most comfortable with, I think he would take.
That's fair. I mean, a record is a record, though, right? Like, I mean, you look in the book and you see your name at number 1, you would like it.
It's during the free agency. It's then playing, different play. I mean, you know how you do the records.
He's worried Andy Reid going to come up and catch him.
Six Super Bowls is a pretty strong record. I think that's
pretty good.
Enough.
Yeah, I mean, as a head coach, and he, of course, also had great success as a coordinator, but he won 6 Super Bowls as a head coach. He coached teams to 9 Super Bowls. Those things are records. They are at the top of the record book and figure to stay there, to your point, unless Andy Reid comes along and catches him from behind.